A little while ago I did a video that I called Craft Store Craftiness, where I went to my local Michael's and I went through the aisles and picked out things that I thought would be useful for model railroading applications. In that particular video I didn't get much past the clearance aisle, but I did promise to do more videos later on where I'd get a little further into the store. Now, the reality in today's world where so many things are purchased online is that the traditional model railroad hobby shop is becoming more and more of a rarity. In many cases, craft stores like Michael's or Hobby Lobby are the only thing that modelers have within a close drive to be able to find things. Of course, these stores don't really cater to model railroaders, but there are many things within the walls of those stores that can be used by model railroaders, even if they're not specifically used on the layout. And that's what this video series is really all about. Hi everybody, I'm Joe Parker of the Pixel Depot. So last week I went to my local Michael's to see if I can find some new things to present to you guys. Unfortunately, they were in the process of doing their seasonal switchover, so lots of shelves were empty and a lot of things weren't in the places that they normally were. Having said that, I found some items that I think will be useful to the average modeler, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So in the flower section, I found a number of items that could be used on the layout, but I didn't want to overload the video with too many things from one section, so I only picked up one thing, and that was this. This is called an ash moss mat. Now this is a fairly dense sheet of moss that you can tear apart and use as foliage in various areas. I picked this particular one. There were a number of different ones there, but I picked this one because it looked the most like something that would be scaled to my HO scale model railroad, and so this is the one that I thought would be most useful. There's some nice color variations in there that I thought would be useful, and there's a reasonable amount within this package. This mat is priced at $9.49. Now this was the most expensive item that I purchased at Michael's at this particular trip, and so most of the things that we're going to talk about here today are much cheaper than that. But this is a reasonable amount of material to be able to cover various parts of the layout, give you some different texture, look, and feel in terms of your scenery, and I think it'll go a long way even at that sort of high price tag. After my first Craft Store Craftiness video, someone mentioned in the comments that they go there to buy jeweler's chain. Now this chain can be used on the layout for a lot of different things. You can use it for tie downs on rail cars. You can just have it laying at different industries in a pile. There's lots of different uses that you can make up for it. The chain does come in different sizes, shapes, thicknesses, and colors, and there are a lot of other items in the jewelry section as well that you might be able to take a look at and find a use for on your layout. I kind of honed in on this particular one, which is a bronze colored chain that I thought would be useful. This one I think I'll end up using for tie downs on flat cars and so on, and there's enough in this package to do a number of flat cars. I would guess 5 or 6 anyway. The chain came in at $3.99, which is not too expensive, and like I said, it has a number of different uses, so on a per project basis that amortizes out to a pretty small number. In my last video on doing scenery for the grunge, I mentioned that it would be kind of handy if humans had additional arms. Sometimes you need an extra limb or extra set of hands in order to hold things down or keep things in place. Now we're probably not going to grow any third arms anytime soon, so that leaves us looking for tools that are going to help us out in that area. One that I found at Michael's this time are these mini clothespins. Now, these are really small, and I thought that they would be really useful for holding things in place, especially during gluing and so on during model building. A lot of times you need something that's going to just hold things in place for a little while. You don't want the spring action to be too much where it might damage the materials, but you also want to make sure that it's going to stick in place. These are a really nice size for that. They're nice and small. A lot of times when you find these small clips, the compression on them is really heavy. The springs are very strong. So I thought that these would be able to come in useful to hold things just long enough for the glue to set up and to get tacky. These came in at $2.99 for a package of 20 on an individual piece-by-piece basis. They're pretty cheap, and those are something that I'll be able to use for many years to come. I found a number of things in the sewing section that could be useful for modeling. In past videos, I've used pins, needles, and other sewing materials in order to hold things in place or do other things. For example, modelers use Ponce wheels all the time for various modeling purposes. Now what I picked up this time was this small flexible tape measure. This comes in at, I think, 10 feet long. Yep, 120 inches. And this can be used to measure all kinds of different things. Where I tend to use something like this is if I'm actually measuring the length of track. So as we know, our track curves, it bends, it does all kinds of different things. And so if you're trying to figure out what the scale mileage is or scale footage is of your track, it can be kind of difficult using a standard ruler. With this flexible tape measure, you can put it down on the track, make it conform to all the curves and dips and bends that are in the track, and get a real measurement instead of an estimated one that would be in a straight line. This came in at $1.29, so a real bargain. This is something that can be used in many different instances outside of your modeling as well, so for $1.29, I thought it was a pretty good investment. As model railroaders, we're constantly looking for scenery products that'll help us to save time. And I found two here that I'll group together under one category. These are tree cutouts that have an adhesive on the back, and these would be useful for putting on backdrops. The detail on them is certainly not such that you'd be able to use them as a foreground tree, and they're kind of two-dimensional anyway, so that wouldn't really work. But for something that's far away, like the corner behind my consolidated coal loop on my Monument City Terminal Division layout, where the viewer is going to be at least 5 to 10 feet away, these would be perfect. Along those lines as well, in terms of shortcuts, came this sand mat. This was on clearance, so I don't know how available this would normally be. This is a 10.75 by 16.25 inch mat. Where something like this could come in handy, I thought, would be a project like I did in my last video for scenery on the grunge. Sometimes you want that patchy look. It is kind of large, but you wouldn't even have to use this as a whole. You could cut it up into small pieces and just put patches down and then just put the grass around it so that it looked like there was just a patch of dirt showing through in one particular area. These tree stickers came in at $3.99, and the sand mat was $3 on clearance. Now, they did have other mats there. I'm not a fan of using mats as a one-dimensional coverall area, but like I said, if you were able to use those underneath and break it up with static grass or foliage or other pieces, that's where those things would kind of come in handy. There's a whole section in Michael's that is devoted to scrapbooking, those types of things. And what I found there was a lot of things that would be useful for those Cricut machines that they sell. But what I was looking for in that section was paper material. What I was able to find here was a good selection of different papers. These were 25 cents each. These were on clearance, so I don't know how available they'll be at all times, but I did like the idea of getting a single sheet in various colors so that I could make signs out of them. In an upcoming video, I'm going to be talking about making signs, and I thought this would be useful in that case, because sometimes you want a background that has some color to offset perhaps a plain font or just using black lettering and so on to give your sign some punch and some oomph. I like the fact that these were individual sheets. I was able to pick up some of these bright colors that you might use once or twice, but you're probably not going to need 10, 20, 50 sheets of it, so it was nice to be able to find these. Now, these aren't quite cardstock weight, but they aren't copy paper weight either, so they'll be able to give you some body and some heft to be able to print those out and then put them onto the layout as signs. The other thing that I found across the aisle from these that I did not buy because I happen to have enough were packages of multiple sheets of colored papers in variety packs. Now, I use things like this for the waybills for my car cards. My car card system uses clear plastic sleeves for the car cards and then colored paper for the waybills to indicate the destination for that particular car. I find that this can be a shortcut for operators so that they don't necessarily have to read where the car is going. If the color is all red, for example, they know it's going to one area of the layout. If it's light blue, for example, they know it's going back to Bayview Yard staging. Those multi-packs of paper can be very useful for giving that a try and having a variety of colors to be able to use in that instance. Last but not least was my clearance find for the trip, and that was this Krylon matte sealer. This was on sale for $3 per can. The list price on it was, I think, $6.99, so that was a reasonable savings. I don't know if Krylon is discontinuing it or if Michaels is just not going to sell it anymore, but as I mentioned, it was clearance marked, and so I picked up a couple of cans of that. I think this would be useful as a replacement or a fill-in for dull coat or other matte sealers. There's lots of times where you want something to have a dull finish or at least a satin finish on the layout so that it doesn't look too glossy and too new. I think this will go a long way. And at $3 per can, when you're paying $5 or $6 or $7 sometimes for a small can of dull coat, this was, in my opinion, quite the bargain. So that's all for this episode. I do apologize that there weren't too many out-of-the-box ideas here of things that, might have a different use for something, but scaled down would look like something completely different on the layout. But as I mentioned, the store was in a bit of disarray as they were changing over for the different seasons, so I wasn't able to find a lot of the things that I thought might be useful. However, that's not going to stop me from continuing to try. I'll go back in a little while and see what else I can pick up. And maybe with the change of seasons, there'll be new or different items there that weren't in the store this time. I've said it before that modelers are a creative bunch. And the whole point here is to look at things in a whole different way from the ways that manufacturers may have envisioned them. There's been lots of times that I've gone to different layouts and been amazed at how the layout builder has used an item in a way that I never would have considered before. So along those lines, if there's anything that you have used on your layout that you've picked up at the craft store that wasn't really the way the manufacturer intended it, let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for new ideas, and as you can see in the chain example from this particular video, if an idea comes my way that I think is going to be useful, next time I go to the store, I'm likely to pick that item up, and if it's something that I haven't mentioned in one of these videos before, I might highlight it there as well. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button. That tells YouTube that this is something that people find to be useful and will put it in front of other people's eyes. Also, if you want to stay up to date with what's going on the channel, click that subscribe button and also click on the bell so that you'll know when new content is available. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. The links to those are in the description below. Finally, for other great model railroading videos, you can check out the items in these playlists over here. I'm Joe Parker of the Pixel Depot. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll meet me next time in the train room.